Hi everyone, my name is Casey Wei. I'm an interdisciplinary artist based in Vancouver, BC on unceded Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territories. As an intro, I can sum up my art practice in 3 words. It's discursive, it's ephemeral, and it's social. As I'm constantly learning how to reciprocate the giving and the taking that is necessary to exist and work meaningfully in the world, and specifically in the art world. Materially, my practice often takes the form of projects where I act as director, work with numerous collaborators, and results in various documents in print, audio, and moving image form to be disseminated thereafter. I often use multimedia and multi-narrative strategies of representation, as much of my work is event-based, collaborative, and iterative. This means one project can have many components: a book, a performance, a video, a concert, and be shown in different contexts, like in a cinema space as a single channel film, in a gallery as an installation, online via social media and YouTube. And right now I'm doing a PhD in contemporary art at Simon Fraser University here in Vancouver, BC. And my research historically looks back to the 1950s at the evolution of communes in Maoist China, and how collectivization in a communist sense was put into practice there, and how that influenced the development of politics and art policy in Canada throughout the 1950s, which was a pivotal time period for the conception of the Canadian state model of funding, which is still used today. In particular, something that might be of interest to folks here is a project from 2011 to 2016 that has very much been an entry point to my research. The project is called the Bishan Commune, led by Chinese artists O Ning and Zuo Jing. It was a commune as a social practice artist initiative led by the 2 artists, which took place in the town of Bishan in Anhui province in China from 2011 to 2016. So these 2 artists came from the city to the countryside with lofty artist intentions to improve the lives of the villagers, and over the course of 5 years did so through trial and error, through an annual art festival that was supported by the city officials, by bringing in tourism like art tourism and tourism year-round, and actually making material improvements to the villagers' lives. It was conceptualized as an artist utopia, but over time shifted in practice to become a rural economic revitalization project. In short, the project ended because China, being an authoritarian state, particularly with the Xi Jinping administration, could not accept that any agent outside of the Communist Party, independent of the Communist Party, was responsible for improving people's lives. There's a lot more to say about this, but for the purposes of this intro, I'll end it there, and I recommend checking out Mai Corlin's book, The Bishan Commune and the Practice of Socially Engaged Art in Rural China, and O Ning's Bishan Commune, How to Start Your Own Utopia. Now, for myself, my methodology for engaging in any kind of social practice or collaboration is to read the room. It's quite simple. Like, I think of how one is as a person and how that comes across through one's personality, and that has a lot to do with the approach you take as it goes underway, as related to how others might perceive your intentions. So I think for me, the best approach is always one that is simultaneously honest about yourself and your interest in the collaboration and what you hope to achieve from it from the get-go, while giving a lot of space for what that collaboration might become with your collaborators, because we all, come to a collaboration with different strengths, different hopes and desires, different expectations, and different communication styles. For instance, the Art Rock concert series, that started in September 2015, and it only happened because the promoter who worked at the local dive bar also played music, and I had asked her to perform a bit earlier that summer at another art event completely unrelated. And her ask was for me to host an event at the bar every week, which was just too much for me. It's always been like a, part-time volunteer, somebody's even called it like a community service like thing I did, which I never thought of it as such. But yeah, I was just like done, I wasn't getting paid to like put on an event, but I was open to trying it once a month just for fun, basically. And I didn't think much more of it. It's like, once a month, I have friends who are artists, who are musicians, who are artist-musicians. I myself am an artist-musician, and I just wanted a space to play in a context where I could treat music as part of my art practice. Art rock with a question mark. And the question mark is very important because it kind of qualifies the event into a more of a open-ended investigation. Like every iteration would be different. Every iteration would be an experiment and open to surprising, I think, ourselves in our very, jaded communities of musicians and artists who have just like seen everything before. So every month I asked 3 artist-musician friends bands to play, and I'd make the poster, I'd do the sound, have a friend do the video, have other friends take shifts at the door. I would take shifts at the door, and we'd split, not me, but like we'd split the very minimal, the cover that we'd make. And it was never really about, making money, obviously. But it's for like creating a scene and creating the community that you want to exist in. And over time, the artist music scene filled this container I had created, and it wasn't difficult. It didn't feel like work anymore. It just felt like this kind of machine almost, where every month, on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, we just knew what we'd be doing that night. We'd go to the Astoria, some friends' bands would play, and I would be kind of busy running around, kind of hosting, which is kind of what I like to do best at social situations, just to have something to do. And it just like over time, I think I look back at the documentation of it, I'm just like, wow, like we did that for 3.5 years. And eventually in 2018, it grew to be above ground at a finale public art event that was backed by the city and the Art University, Emily Carr University in Vancouver. And that's when I thought I should end it, because it had become symbolically accepted by the mainstream. And also I was doing it for 3 years. And by that point I was just tired. But after it ended, an artist-run center, an ARC in Calgary, Alberta, wrote to me and asked if they could do one, and they didn't want to like impede on my project. And I was like, dude, I don't own art rock as a concept in any way. Like, of course you can do your own art rock event. That's great. And they asked me to come and show the film that I made. I made a film about the music scene in Vancouver, like post 2010 Olympics to like 2018, because that was the time I began becoming active. I finished school. I started making films, making music videos, making, the art rock series, and all kind of like the footage over the years kind of tied together into this film. Anyway, I made the film. The Artist Run Center Stride Gallery in Calgary asked me to come show the film and, kind of be there for their inaugural art rock event. And at that event, I met Desiree, who was the director of Mountain Standard Time Performative Art Festival. And that is what led me to Thailand in 2019, where I did an art rock with performance artists in Chiang Mai. And that was, the most incredible experience of my life. I would have never, I think, gone to Thailand if it wasn't for doing art rock and being open to just where that would take me. Like, nowhere in my head did I ever think in 2015 that like this little concert series I was doing with friends would lead so meaningfully to other points in my life, in my like practice. So yeah, and following Thailand, following the pandemic, in 2023 last year, I did 2 more art rocks. We did 2 more art rocks, me and the performers, at the Libby Leschgold Gallery, which is a part of the Emily Carr University, in the summer, and that was really great. So every time I think this project is done, it kind of, in one way or another, kind of invites me back to it, which is I think something about discursivity that I return to, because it's not something I can control, but it's something that I can, like respond to. I'm always open to another art rock. So if anyone listening wants to do an art rock in Europe, I'm your gal. Anyway, so we're bringing it back to space, because all events, art rock, others, like any event happens, they all happen in spaces. I think of space quite practically because it's so limited here in Vancouver. Vancouver is pretty infamous for being a very unaffordable city, and the art and music community definitely feels that. Space is a privilege, but any space that tries to be permanent here is also a great burden. Most ARCs pay, if they don't own their building, pay over $3,000 to rent their physical gallery locations every month. And having worked at ARCs, when there's an exhibition, there is one person in the gallery, and maybe 5 people come through. Like, that's just the nature of art. It's like a very small, esoteric activity most of the time. And I've been thinking a lot about non-physical spaces, particularly with Reissue. For instance, Reissue is an online arts publishing project, a platform that I co-founded in 2020. We got the grant right before the pandemic happened from the Vancouver Foundation, and it's a systems change grant, like a 3-year systems change grant. Designed to address systemic issues in the field you're in. And for us, for the project, it was arts publishing. At one point, it was suggested to us by a strategic planner to call it a magazine because it's more digestible to funders, donors, and the general public. Like the general public understand what a magazine is, even if it's online. But I think platform's actually more accurate to what I envision to be the work of Reissue. It's a space, but it's a non-space. It's virtual and malleable, but it needs to be understood and to be valued as such. And with any startup, whether it's a magazine or a business or a restaurant, whatever it is, it's really hard to start something in an age where attention is so, there's an economy of it, and we don't, our attention spans are quite limited, and we already have our discursive networks kind of laid out, and we know where we want to go for information. So to be a new thing kind of competing for everyone's attention is challenging. And that's like a challenge that I think we've organically addressed. Growth is slow, but it's there. And there's also kind of like a ceiling to how much, as an art publishing platform that's specifically like focused on the West Coast, particularly BC and Alberta, there's a ceiling too that I'm still trying to figure out, like, what should Reissue be and how big should it be, because the funders always want you to say that you want to grow, but to make an argument for not growing as quickly as capitalism would like is always a challenge. And from the Attawell article, Spatial Relations, having read that, I relate to the idea of space as practiced a lot. For me, like, discursivity comes back, where discourse is like content, which is really important, but just as important is how we link up and how we create these discursive pathways through which discourse flows. And that, for me, holds so much potential, like where the life of an artwork takes on a journey of its own once you think you're done with it, like with the whole art rock, like, saga in my life. And physical spaces are important too, but the utopian idea of having a physical space can so easily and quickly reify and turn good intentions into the very model you were trying to escape. And I think that's responsible for a lot of burnout in the art sector here anyway, the nonprofit art sector here. With regards to the last prompt, in thinking about archiving and alternative heritage practices, I think archives are always in a state of change, and I think the pressure we feel to preserve things is compounded by the endlessly renewing feed of information. That's not, like a new insight or anything. Like every minute of every day, I'm just constantly trying to remember what I just saw, you know? And personally, I don't have any insight or best practices. I use hard drives just like everyone else. I have multiple computers, and everything's very scattered. I don't have a good syncing app, or I hardly know how AirDrop works or Bluetooth or whatever. And I don't really want to know how these things work. I kind of like having things in these semi-functional linking relationships that is only as good as my archiving practices. I mean, I think that's just very human. And the memories of certain experiences like art rock come up again and again over time, and that happens through writing, through presentations like this one. Public manifestations of the story and the history of art rock keep it alive. And every time I talk about it, it's different, and it like creates a new link, and new kind of like reflection. And I have worked on several archival projects with artist-run centers as a project manager. I'm not a trained archivist or anything, but I've definitely managed like archivists and timelines and budgets and stuff. And I can say that ARC's institutional memories are only as good as the funding will allow. It's important to preserve records, images, documentation of these cultural activities. And some ARCs advertise their archives better than others. Sometimes new leadership will just completely redesign the website, and access to the digital archive that was there, 2 weeks ago will just disappear, and you have to like way back machine it to see. And not everyone like cares or knows how to do that. It just kind of adds yet another barrier to accessing like this like this counter alternative history that we've the organization has tried really hard to preserve over 4 years. So I'm very against this particular move, which I've seen happen like 3 times in the last like couple of years. And right now in Canada, there's a big shift to digitize archives of legacy organization. The artist-run centers, the OG ones that started in the 1970s with like 50 plus years of paper and tape and outdated and incompatible formats. And they need public money to do this archiving work, because we would argue as artists that these materials are very important, are of importance for the public record. And that brings the question back to the funders, particularly here in Canada. What histories are worth preserving, and how much money are they able to provide to do that work? Like, it's not cheap to build an infrastructure to manage your records and to figure out where to store those records, because the costs of cloud storage and the ethics of cloud storage are always up for debate. And best archiving practices mean that you have your cloud version and you have your hard drive version. You have multiple hard drive versions, and they need to be like backed up and re-backed up every few years, because hard drives themselves will have a shelf life. So for all these reasons, it takes and for like an institution that's like 40-50 years old, it can't just be done on the daily operating budget. It's like a big extra project. And there are many artist-run centers, or numerous artist-run centers with that history, and it's like kind of up to the funders to decide how they want to support that. And in lieu of the proper support, it's up to the artist administrators who work at these organizations to be like crafty and clever and resourceful, and do it out of their own kind of volunteer labor to preserve what they feel is important. In closing, I think I'd just like to say thank you to Amy and Laura, and to everyone who made this happen and for inviting me to be a part of it. Again, discursivity, the flow of information occurring through this panel, is very heartening to see as an act of solidarity and resistance across the world. And it's great to see this work being acknowledged and supported by academies, and for there to be a place to talk about the ongoing challenges of making work for the communities we want to exist in. All right, thank you so much. Bye.